Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see everyone here. Welcome to Vashon Island Unitarian Community. My name is Alex Clark. I go by she, her pronouns. I'll be your service leader today. If you're visiting, please participate as you feel comfortable. You're invited to stay and introduce yourself in conversation afterwards. We'd be so happy to meet you. Our congregation here is committed to individual freedom of belief. We welcome diversity. We seek to promote a sense of community which fosters religion or which enriches the spirit, whatever speaks to your heart. We are a lay-led community, strengthened and enriched by reading together the volunteer contributions of members and friends. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homeland of the Squabash Coast Salish Native people. The Puyallup people have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step towards allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land and beyond. As we begin our service, take a few deep breaths. Exhaling long and inhalation. Anything that you're carrying with you that might not be comfortable, just fall off your shoulders. Breath can do that. Let's take one more breath as one. As we share this air. I'd like to introduce our guest minister, Reverend Bruce Bodie. Bruce A. Bodie, is a minister emeritus at the Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Port Townsend. He is in Washington, from which he retired in 2018 as the senior minister after serving the congregation for 14 years, from 2004 to 2018. Before coming to Port Townsend, Reverend Bodie was an interim minister at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, Texas, from 2002 to 2004, and the Hope Unitarian Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from 2001 to 2002. Prior to that, he served for 22 years, from 1978 to 2001, as an associate minister at the Fountain Street Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a large, independent, religiously liberal congregation. Welcome, Reverend Bodie.
Thank you, Alex, for that opening. And the part about being a Fountain Street Church is going to play a bit this morning in our service. Well, greetings to all of you who are present here in the sanctuary, and also to those of you who may be zooming in this morning, which might include Melvin and Margaret Mackey, who graciously hosted my wife Flossie and me last evening. We were able to see the second game of the World Series together and had a fine dinner afterwards. I had forgotten what a happy, joyous sound I find when I come. This is now my third time with you. I was last here on in December. Right as the year was closing, it was the final service of the 2024. It seems like a long time ago now. But some of you may recall that service ended that was only 9 months ago. So. Well, and now here I am on the Sunday that is closest to Halloween. And I see that Halloween is certainly being recognized on your Fair Island. You're coming up the hill from the ferry yesterday afternoon. We were greeted with a corridor of skeletons along the road. Well, in the years of my ministry, I've always designated the Sunday that's closest to Halloween as Halloween Sunday, a major religious festival. As I approach it, it functions like a magnet in pulling together a whole host of themes. I'll get to some of those in a minute. But let me begin with the lighting of the chalice and with these words from Jacob Trapp. We light this chalice to the mystery within us, reaching out to the mystery beyond us. As we enter into, is my microphone good for you? As we enter fully into the darker, colder, and leafless half of the year, themes of inversion and reversal are brought forward. Halloween brings in the shadow, hidden, the unknown, the unconscious. You probably know the phrase, this is the time of the year when the veil between the worlds is thinnest. Halloween also brings it forward the play of masks and magicians. And indeed, you might think of it as the festival of and for the mythological trickster. The particular theme for today's service as we come near to Halloween is drawn from the ideas of scholar of mythology, Joseph Campbell, who lived from 1904 to 1987. Let me ask at the start, how many of you have heard of Joseph Campbell? Quite a number. How many of you are acquainted with the PBS 6-part series that he did called The Power of Myth? It was interviewed by Bill Moyers. Some of you have seen that. It played on Sweet Weeks a number of times, all the way into 2000. But I don't know if you, and Bill Moyers actually died at the age of 91 this past June. Remarkable man and talent. Well, then thirdly, how many of you have read somewhat deeply into the works of Joseph Campbell? I'll give you an illustration of that. Here was one of his, it's called The Masks of God, a 4-volume work. Have you read it? I mean, I've read it once. But primitive mythology, Oriental mythology, Occidental mythology, and then creative mythology. So, titled the sermon today, Masks of God, and I'm certainly going to draw from his work. So as it happens, I had the personal good fortune of organizing lectures for Joseph Campbell. It was during 3 consecutive years when I started at Thomas Street Church, the years 1980 to 82, and they said I served for 22 years there. When I first met Campbell, I was 33 years old, and he was 76 years old, a couple of years younger than I am now. The last time he was here, actually, the last time I saw him actually was 82, so he would have been exactly the same age I am. But also at that time, when I first met him, I was immersed in the poetry of Robinson Jeffers, a California poet. Some of you may have heard of him. He lived from 1887 to 1962, and I knew that Campbell had also been, when he was a younger person, influenced by the poetry of Robinson Jeffers. And so I recall in my initial meeting with Joseph Campbell, as I was taking him from the airport to downtown Grand Rapids, about a 20-minute ride, I mentioned that I was really interested in the poetry of Robinson Jeffers. I knew he was too, and he proceeded at that point to, from memory, just relate whole passages that were lodged in his mind. So I thought it might be appropriate this morning if we would have our responsive reading based on some, I can't remember if these are the lines that he actually spoke. When I was done, so it's in the responsive reading is on your purple sheet, and there is a word in here in your second to the last response where it says, it is all truly one life, red blood and tree sap, animal, mineral. I pronounce that word sidereal. If anybody needs to correct me, please do. But that's star stuff, all right? So when you get to that sidereal word.
Excuse me, could we share purple sheets? Some people back here don't have it.
I've got two of them here. There are sheets up here that this is amazing, this crowd on the sun. Everybody has the all right, here we go. So I've got the lines that say minister, right? So these are some lines from Jeffers, all right? He says it flows out of mystery into mystery. There is no beginning, how could there be? And no end, how could there be?
Stars shine in the sky, spray light, shore, and the waves.
Erase the line. I pray you not to love classifications.
The page is like a river, from source to sea now, one flowing light.
We that have the honor and hardship of being human are one flesh with the beasts and the beasts with the plants, one stream of sap.
And certainly the plants and algae and the birds spring fresh with the stars.
The classifications are mostly a kind of memoria technica, that is to say, an artificial aid to memory, a mnemonic device. Use it, but don't be fooled.
It is all truly one. Red blood and tree sap, animal, sidereal, one stream,
One consciousness, the one breath of the organ blown through innumerable conduits of sound.
blessed are the ears that hear.
Our first hymn is, I think, a haunting, tender hymn that may not be familiar to you, but I'm relating it to Halloween, to All Hallows Eve, and to the 2 days of All Saints Day and All Souls Day that follow after. It's number 336 in your gray covered hymn, number 336. It's titled All My Memories of Love. The words are those of the Russian poet Anna Akhmatova. And Leslie is going to play on the harp too, and my wife Flossie has agreed to lead us in singing. Somewhat reluctantly, I find.
There's a few high notes, so I want the sopranos to help carry me through. The pipes aren't what they used to be.
Souls I've lost to tears now the ocean. And with their song, sing again, let me sound. Willows in September, touch the water clear. Set up precious all of the flowing, rising from sunlit past and
Thanks. Let's do it. We're gonna mix it up a little bit and, we are going to do our joys and concerns now. And we'll now resume the recording and we will go to the offertory. As members and friends of Vashon Island Unitarian Universalist, or we commit to supporting our congregation. Financial resources help us pay for speakers and staff and support our social justice programs and maintain our building. Please support VIUU with your pledges and offerings so that we can continue to be a vital community. Our congregation engages beyond our walls for peace, social and economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of our planet and its inhabitants. Once a month, we contribute a financial offering to a regional, national, or international organization that aligns with these values. This week's offering supports our beloved VIU community. So as we receive the offering, please join us in singing through twice. We give thanks. That is also on the inside of the hymnal.
Is this? Which one? Yes. This one?
The top one.
We're all gathered here, and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here, and those far away, for the time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
Joseph Campbell, as I mentioned, lived from 1904 to 1987. He was a professor for 38 years at Sarah Lawrence College outside of New York City, and he was known as one of the top scholars of the myths and stories of people from all over the world and from all times in human history. And he was particularly interested to explore the common themes of our human stories, believing that just as our species can be identified with a similarly shaped physical structure, so the human psyche, which he described as the inward experience of the human body, so the human psyche is also essentially constant in our species and thus produces certain common themes. I had the privilege, as I indicated, of organizing lectures for Campbell at the Fountain Street Church in Grand Rapids for 3 years from 1980 to 1982. After those evening lectures to audiences of between 500 and 600 people, people really came out, he would wind down with a drink in one of the hotel restaurants where he was staying and I had the opportunity then to engage him in numerous conversations in which he did not hold himself back from a much younger man. It was, as you can imagine, one of the high points of my life. Well, in addition to these lectures, Campbell also agreed in the second and third years of these lectures to deliver sermons to the congregation. He refused, however, to call them sermons. He was a teacher, and so they were lectures. However, if you're familiar at all with his lectures, they were rich with thoughts and ideas that pertain to how we live and what life calls of us. And so his lectures would be rich with life wisdom, since, as he believed, this is what the myths and the stories are about, the life wisdom that comes from the deep places of our being that is winnowed over time by successive generations. As fortune would have it, these lecture sermons that he gave were delivered in each instance on the Sunday before Halloween. The second one actually was on Halloween day itself. And this was the Sunday in the congregation in which children of the congregation entered the sanctuary wearing their Halloween costumes, which was the perfect setup for a man who had written this classical Masks of God, the 4-volume work. Campbell always spoke without notes. I listened yesterday to those sermons again. They were remarkable for how he just moved with things. And he was completely delighted and taken in by the event. And he spoke on both occasions about the origin and meaning of Halloween, of the Halloween festival, and the theme of masks. Our reading this morning will be about the function of myths in guiding the individual through the stages of a life. This is taken from Bill Moyer's series, which I had mentioned earlier, 6 parts, which were transcribed in this volume. Actually, this volume contains more than is in the presentations. Moyers interviewed him for 24 hours, including a lot of that was at George Lucas's ranch, where he saw all of Lucas's films just like that and commented on it. At any rate, and here's the DVD version if you want to look at that. But at any rate, that PBS series did not appear until 1988, which was the year after Campbell's death, in which he returned to what he referred to as the mysterious source land, from which we all come and to which we all return. So Flossie, in this, we're going to read part of that interview. Flossie is going to be Bill Moyers. Welcome, Bill. And I get to play the part of Joseph Campbell. So, you ready?
Do you think that the poet Wordsworth was right when he wrote, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar." Do you think this is so?
I do. Not in entire forgetfulness. That is to say, the nerves in our body carry the memories that shaped the organization of our nervous system to certain environmental circumstances and to the demands of an organism.
What do our souls owe to the ancient myths?
The ancient myths were designed to harmonize the mind and the body. The mind can ramble off in strange ways and want things the body does not want. The myths and rites were means of putting the mind in accord with the body and the way of life in accord with the way that nature dictates.
So these old stories live in us?
They do indeed. The stages of human life and development are the same today as they were in ancient times. As a child, you are brought up in a world of discipline, of obedience, and you are dependent on others. All this has to be transcended when you come to maturity, so that you can live not in dependency but with self-responsible authority. If you can't cross that threshold, you have the basis of neuroses. And then comes the one after you have gained the world of yielding it, the crisis of dismissal, disengagement.
And ultimately death.
And ultimately death. That's the ultimate disengagement. So myth has to serve both aims. That of inducting the young person into the life of his or her world, that's the function of the folk ideas, and then disengaging him or her. The folk idea unshells the elementary idea which guides you to your own inward life.
And these myths tell me how others have made the passage and how I can make the passage.
Yes, and also what the beauties of the way are. I feel that now, moving into my own last years, the myths help me to go with it.
What kind of myths? Give me one that's actually helped you.
Well, the tradition in India, for instance, of actually changing the whole way of dress, even changing your name as you pass from one stage to another. When I retired from teaching, I knew I had to create a new way of life. And I changed my manner, I changed my manner of thinking about my life just in terms of that notion, moving out of the sphere of achievement into the sphere of enjoyment and appreciation and relaxing to the wonder of it all.
And then there is that final passage through the dark gate.
That is no problem at all. The problem in middle life, when the body has reached its climax of power and begins to decline, is to identify yourself not with the body, which is falling away, but with the consciousness of which the body is a vehicle. This is something I learned from the myths. What am I? Am I the bulb that carries the light, or am I the light of which the bulb is a vehicle? One of the psychological problems in growing old is the fear of death. People can resist the door of death. But this body is a vehicle of consciousness, and if you can identify with the consciousness, you can watch the body go like an old car. There goes the fender, there goes the tire, one thing after another, but it's predictable. And then gradually the whole thing drops off and consciousness rejoins consciousness. It is no longer in this particular environment. So let's be together in a brief period of silence, which will lead into a musical interlude before the sermon. as I mentioned in the introduction to my reading, I heard Campbell deliver 2 sermons in 2 successive years on the Sundays just prior to Halloween. The sermon the first year was titled Trick or Treat. And then the second year it was called Trick or Treat Round 2. And as I said, I just listened to those, the auto recordings of those. And I've been actually in touch with the current minister at the Fountain Street Church, and this Sunday, it's probably already occurred, it's 3 hours difference, they are actually having the service is relating to Joseph Campbell 45 years after his first appearance there. Well, Halloween, Campbell explained, is a festival of the ancient Celtic world in particular. Halloween, All Hallows Eve, is the evening preceding the 2 holy days, All Saints' Day followed by All Souls' Days, and then it's matched exactly 6 months on the other side of the year by May Day, which is preceded the evening before by Walpurgis Night. So at Halloween, the organic world is clearly passing into the realm of darkness. There is the falling of leaves from the trees. And then on the other side is May Day, the celebration, as Campbell puts it, of the breaking forth of the leaves of spring, fresh leaves of spring. These ancient pastoral people, said Campbell, joined their meditation with the actualities of the natural world, participating in the world by way of meditation and relevant action. And who are these goblins, then, that appear just at this time of the year? With the passing of the year into darkness, one's meditation is naturally drawn to those who have passed from this life into the darkness of the grave. And in many parts of Europe in those days, people would go to the graves of their departed loved ones, just as they do in Mexico, the Day of the Dead. They would bring not only prayers and recollections, but also little gifts. And Campbell, I'm quoting him now from these sermons, said, "There is a secret psychological aspect to this. So often, when a dear person dies, we have a sense of guilt and regret for the lovely things we have not done and for the little negative acts that we wish we had not rendered. And along with this, he said, there is an old fear of death, that the dead can somehow reach out from their graves to hurt those who have hurt them, thus playing a nasty trick on the living. And so gifts are brought to the graves, not only to honor and remember the dead, but also to appease them. Now that is how it was in the ancient, in much of ancient Europe. But in the Celtic world, to which our trick-or-treat custom owes its origin, it was the other way around. That is to say, the graveyards come to the homes of the living. Halloween, said Campbell, is the night of the re-entry of the dead into their domiciles, visiting again the people with whom they had dwelled. The idea of giving a gift, a treat, or suffering a trick, a shocking, surprising, nasty little trick, is associated with the guilt feeling. The means by which the dead enter their former homes is in the form of their own dear children, who wear the masks of the dead. And this is another ancient idea to which Campbell referred, a kind of reincarnation idea in which the children are the returning ancestors, and in a sense, says Campbell, they truly are. That is to say, the ancestral genes, the ancestral strain of inheritance appears again in these little children. Many people in traditional cultures, he said, look at the child to see who it is who has returned. So these masked children, these masked creatures, our children, represent our departed loved ones. But they also, said Campbell, are representatives of that general energy of life which pours through us and of which we are momentarily manifestations and creatures. Now, watching the masked children in what is called the March of the Goblins Parade, that was at Fountain Street Church, Campbell was able to identify two basic types of masks. One type of masks has to do with masks that represent various roles of society, that roles that a child might one day wish to take on, that of a dancer or an athlete, a firefighter. Our grandson yesterday was a 3-year-old firefighter putting out many fires, or a farmer, a doctor, a nurse, and so on. Well, then secondly, said Campbell, there are the masks that represent, quote, unconscious dynamic powers, forms not found in society or our daily life, but rather forms that have to do with the, quote, deep mysteries of the unconscious. And these can be quite terrifying. The more fearsome creatures, ghouls, ghosts, goblins, demons, monsters, and so forth. What is it about this whole game of wearing masks? Asked Campbell. The answer? When you wear a mask, when you put on a costume, there's a shift of energy. You can feel the energy flow and the life come forward. The mask, as it were, pulls up the energy of the body, giving it a momentary focus, like actors and actresses who take on a role, exude a tremendous amount of energy, do things in that role that they would never do in their ordinary lives, and then after they have played that role, they take off the mask, they put down the role, and they return to their ordinary, everyday lives. Watch a youngster going down the street, said Campbell. He may be galloping as though he were a horse. If he were just walking, he might be a little bored. The galloping brings up energy. Campbell said he once had a curious experience when he was parking his car. He drove up to a curb to park the car, and standing right next to the open space of the curb was a youngster in a rigid, catatonic posture. Campbell opened the door to get out of the car, but the youngster, in a very strong voice, said, "You can't park here." Campbell looked around for no parking signs, saw none, and so asked, "Well, why? Why can't I park here?" "Because I'm a fire hydrant." So, says Campbell, I went down the block a ways. I didn't want to break into his meditation. Well, Campbell spoke on these occasions of two basic teachings related to the masks. First, that we are all masks of eternity, masks of God, temporary expressions of that uncreated, inexhaustible energy that pours itself from who knows where into the forms of time and space. Society fashions roles or masks whereby we might receive and focus that energy and give it play, hopefully in beautiful and joyful ways. And thus the masks we wear, the roles that we take on in life, both shape and release this undifferentiated energy of life. But secondly, to make those masks or roles work for us, we must not identify with the mask or the role. It is a mask we wear, a mask that both conceals our true being, that both reveals our true being, and at the same time conceals it. So the mask, if it's doing its job, is pulling up the energy of our being from the creative abyss and giving it focus and form, but at the same time, it is not our true identity. Our deeper identity, says Campbell, is the identity with the undifferentiated energy itself. To know yourself ultimately as this undifferentiated energy and not, first of all, as this passing and particular form in which it now takes shape, although of course we don't know the energy except in its passing forms. And thus, each of us are metaphors of the eternal. Each of us are masks of God, temporary and temporal shapes of that which has no form or shape and which transcends all differentiations, all categories of human cognition, and has no proper name. I don't know if you know this phrase from the Eastern religion. It says, the tongue cannot soil it. The tongue cannot soil it, cannot name it, cannot grasp it. But if you identify, if you identify with the mask, with your particular role in life and with this temporary and passing form, then you're going to lose the sense of play. You'll lose the humor, the freedom, the energy, the vitality, and the joy. You'll become rigid and humorless, bound to the vehicle rather than to the energy of which the vehicle is a temporary carrier and manifestation. Now, to illustrate how we are masks of eternity, Campbell, in the second of these Halloween sermons that I heard, discussed the work of the Irish poet William Butler Yeats, W.B. Yeats. And Yeats compared the cycle of a human lifetime to the cycle of a lunar month. So as the moon goes through its phases, puts on its masks, if you will, so we go through the phases of a lifetime. And if a lifetime is considered to be the biblical 70 years, then the full moon is half a lifetime, or 35 years. And thus, a child is born out of darkness, as the moon is born from darkness, or as Campbell puts it, from the dark abyss of God's will and God's intention, out of which we all come. And currently our moon is on day 5 of its waxing cycle. It's just come out of the darkness. Well, immediately when the child is born out of darkness, the child is imprinted with the force of its society. The child begins to put on the particular mask of its society, learn the language, the customs, the morals and mores, the religion, and the possible roles that are available to the individual in that society. And this, says Yeats, is the primary mask. The next phase of life, the next mask we put on, corresponds to the 8th day of the moon. And here the light begins to increase over the darkness. And here the individual must shape and adjust the imprinted mask received from its society so that it fits with the inward energies that are bubbling up from the creative and dark abyss of God. And this is the crisis of adolescence, the crisis of moving from the dependency of childhood to that of self-responsible authority, from external authority to inward authority. It's a crisis of working out one's own natural impulses with the roles that society has made available to receive the impulse of that energy. So initiation rites throughout the world have to do with this dying to dependency and being born anew to self-responsible adulthood and taking on your particular role in society. And Campbell was concerned about our own society's lack of initiation rituals and believed that much of the lawlessness that you find in our society, which shows a disrespect for that society, which should be a nurturing one, he believes that a lot of that lawlessness is due to lack of initiation. On the other hand, he said, since our young people, many of our young people in our society are often required to work these things out more or less on their own, there may also be a greater creativity in our society in a certain way. Well, the full moon, the 15th night, represents one's life at the fullness of consciousness, the height of one's physical and mental powers. The consciousness, says Campbell, is at its maximum power and radiance, and your body is at its perfection. I am told, he quipped, that in heaven, after the resurrection of the body, everybody there will be 35 years old. And so he advised, take care how you look at age 35. Well, it's at this point, at that point of the full moon, said Campbell, that you have to ask yourself a very important question. Namely, am I the consciousness that informs the body, or am I the vehicle of that consciousness? Campbell answers that we are both at the same time, and we think of ourselves as both at the same time. And that second sermon, he gave an example of this, speaking of looking up at the electric lights of a ceiling. He said, you can say the lights, plural, are on, or you can say the light, singular, is on. These are two different ways of saying the same thing. In the one case, when you speak of the lights, you're placing the accent on the bulbs, which are the vehicles of consciousness. In the other, you're placing the emphasis on the consciousness in a general form. Then he says, as the body deteriorates later on, the consciousness removes itself, and as in that reading, you watch your body go. So at this 15th night of the moon cycle, you have to make the disengagement from the absolute attachment to the body and its personality mask to the play of consciousness of which your body and personality is a vehicle. In the second of these sermons, Campbell said, and I'm going to quote a little bit here, he says, you are consciousness. Now, I think perhaps you could also say, and he has said in different places, in your essential being, you are energy or creativity or protoplasm is a word he used at one time, or spirit or light, or I like to use the power of being, whatever term works for you. But Campbell used the word consciousness, and he used it in a very expansive way. All things are conscious. I'm thinking now of it from Robinson Jeffers, all things are conscious, but the brain brings it to focus, something like that. Okay, now continuing the quote, you are consciousness. That's what you are for a moment in this body, which has now reached its 35th year. And this body is gradually going to deteriorate. The consciousness will finally disengage itself altogether from this vehicle. When you have identified yourself as that consciousness, you can watch the body go with gratitude as the mask or the role that carried you to realization. And when you have identified with consciousness, he said, and I mean this, he said, when you've identified with consciousness, you have identified yourself with a consciousness that lives in others as well. And this latter point for Campbell, this identification of your consciousness with the consciousness of others, is the foundation of morality and the realization of what he called a metaphysical truth, namely, that you and that other creature are one, and that the sense of separateness is secondary. Primary is our unity. And this reality is in keeping with your October theme, your Soul Matters theme of cultivating compassion, as this recognition and experience of being one organism, this is what elicits our compassion. And such compassion for Campbell is the ultimate achievement of the spirit, the knowledge of the heart that feels all things as being one thing, that sees all beings as Buddha beings or Christ beings, depending on your societal mask. This is the ultimate breakthrough in consciousness, this recognition of our primary identity and of compassion which flows from that. This realization can also break through spontaneously, not just in mental life or through meditation or religious discipline. And in this regard, Campbell was fond of telling a story, which he also related in one of those sermons, of an incident that took place in Hawaii. Campbell lived there in the latter years of his life. His wife, the choreographer and dancer Jean Erdman, that some of you may have heard of, she was from Hawaii, and so that's where they moved. She died at the age of 104. Here's the story that Campbell related. On the island of Oahu, where Honolulu is located, there is a ridge of rocky mountain that runs across a large part of the island. There, the wind comes funneling in from the north, and people, says Campbell, go there to get blown about, but also to commit suicide, like jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, one day, a police car with 2 policemen was coming up the cliffside road into this area when they noticed just beyond the railing a young man clearly about to jump. The police car immediately stopped, and the police car on the passenger side of the car leaped out and grabbed the young man just as he was beginning his jump. The police officer was now actually being carried over the cliff when the police officer on the other side came there in time to grab both of them and pull them back from going over. Well, afterwards, the first police officer, the one who grabbed the young man, was asked, "Why didn't you let go?" Says Campbell, he had forgotten everything. His wife, his family, his career, his duty to the world, everything. The police officer's answer was, "I couldn't let go. I had given myself to that young man in such a way that if I had let go, I could not have lived another day in my life." Now, to Campbell, this was a demonstration of a metaphysical truth, a deeper and larger truth that can spontaneously break through the everyday truths of our separateness and our laws of self-preservation. The truth of our self-preservation, believes Campbell, is a secondary truth. Very real, very important, but ultimately secondary. Primary is our unity. And sometimes that primary truth breaks through spontaneously, and we catch examples of it, as in that story of the police officer. And then we move very briefly now to the final phases of the moon, to this 22nd night of the moon, where the moon is clearly moving back into darkness. And here, says Campbell, one has to hold control of oneself to keep going and to continue the course. And then finally, the moon returns to darkness, and, quote, the body then finally disengages you from itself, and you return to the dark mystery of God. Says Campbell in this concluding quote, to know this about yourself, and to know that the life you're leading is not the totality but the vehicle of your totality, is to understand the mystery of life itself as a mask and as a transferring of masks, and not remaining stuck to the mask of the first 8 days or the next 8 nights or the next, but a change of masks. Flow with it, he says, so that the consciousness is in process all the time and does not become fixed. When it becomes fixed, another kind of death occurs. The consciousness is no longer fluent and moving, but has identified itself with a role absolutely. And that's not what you want. So the words of this concluding quote are transcribed from the sermon that I mentioned on October 31, 1982, Halloween Day. 5 years later, on October 30, the day before Halloween, at his retirement home in Honolulu, his wife Jean Erdman with him. Joseph Campbell himself changed masks. His consciousness disengaged itself from the body, and he returned, as he phrased it, to the dark mystery of God. Our closing hymn is number 1011 in your teal-colored hymnal. It's titled Return Again, and Leslie will play the melody through once. Alex, you're going to lead us in singing, is that correct? Okay.
This could be a round, and we did a round so beautifully last week. And we're going to sing it through 4 times, beautiful words. And those of you that want to split off into the round, do it. It's just organically, it happened beautifully last week. So we'll do that again this week.
Thank you, Alex. Our closing words of benediction are again from the poet, Robinson Jeffers, who writes, "We cannot be sure of life for one moment. We can, by force and self-discipline, by many refusals and a few assertions in the teeth of fortune, assure ourselves freedom and integrity in life or integrity in death. And we know that the enormous invulnerable beauty of things is the face of God. Live gladly in its presence, and so die without grief or fear, knowing it survives us." Now we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you, Reverend Booty, so much. What a gift to bring Joseph Campbell here on such a special Sunday. Thank you. Our formal service is now over. I'd like to give special thanks again to Reverend Bruce Bodie, to Leslie, to Catherine, to set up group number 4. It's all the treats there and making it nice and warm and beautiful in here with the leaves of fall. And to everyone here and on Zoom for participating in our service today. You make it such a wonderful community here. And Flossie, yes. Thank you, Flossie, very much for the roles you played today. We'll continue now with VIUU announcements. So if anyone has an announcement related to a VIUU activity, please line up and come forward and tell us about it.
Hi, I'm Bill Knoller, and my wife Kathy and I are trying to revive the circle dinners that we enjoyed some of last year. So we are hosting one in about 3 weeks, Friday, November 14th. We put a sign-up list out by the door, so please sign up if you'd like to attend. It's a potluck dinner, so you're asked to select what item of food you'd like to bring, but we hope you can't all come. We're limited to 10 guests. We don't want to overwhelm the house, but please, if you're interested, the sign-up sheet's by the door. Thank you.
And maybe we can have Beth come up just to give us a quick overview of what a circle dinner is, because Beth so beautifully has offered to coordinate some more. Maybe. I think. Yes.
Circle dinners are a way for us to get to know each other outside of Sunday service and to share food, to break bread, and to form deeper connections with each of us. So I will be, I forgot a piece of paper, but maybe I'll find one today in the office, offering an opportunity for people to host. Thank you to Bill and Kathy for sure for starting the process. And once we have hosts and dates, then I will be walking around with a piece of paper saying you want to come. So prepare yourselves, and particularly people who are visiting or who are new, who are friends, it's a great way to get to know people. So that's it.
I'm Julia Lakey, and I am a member of the nominating committee. And that's a group that has no regular meetings. Does that sound good? And the other member is Gary Preston, and we're supposed to have 3 members by the guidelines. Oh, end of announcement. We're a group of 3, and we follow the guidelines. Thank you. But this is such a wonderful community. I knew it would work out. Our important job is to make sure that we have wonderful people filling all of our committees, all of our leadership positions, and we are overflowing right now. So I feel like I'm coming into a new position with, on the rising tide. So, but realize that come next year, you might be hearing requests from us, and just let that be a little question inside you. Where would I like to step forth and show some leadership in this amazing community? Because you won't be alone. You'll be helped. No one will let you, flounder. So that's the beauty of it. So help us have a successful year, okay?
I'm Matt Burskin, and not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, Kate and I talked a little bit about the membership and encouraging membership in the community, in our group. And so we finished talking about that, we talked about having 3 people to want to come into that group and talk about what could be done to encourage people to come and visit us. So if there are 3 people that are interested, could you see Kate or I, and we could put together a meeting at some point in the next couple months, maybe. Thank you.
My personal request was to ask for other creative individuals who were interested in helping to organize a game and craft event once a month, maybe at different times. And I think it's an excellent place to bring people from the outside of our group in to meet people and see if they'd like to explore further opportunities. So yes, I want to be on your committee, Matt and Kate. And I'm also looking for individuals who would be willing to partner with me because I have a lot of responsibilities out of state. Meaning that if I run into an emergency, I don't want to be the only person leading something. So if you have a desire for specifically creating entertainment within and external to this group, using this building hopefully, please see me and I can bring it to that group and see if there's a way to make it happen. Thanks.
I'm Ted, and this coming Tuesday at the Vashon High School, Indivisible Vashon is going to put on a program called How to Have Courage in Dark Times. And these are dark times, and I think that should be a really interesting and helpful program. So 7 o'clock Tuesday night at the high school.
Excuse me, I'm Kim, and as you know, this is the 50th anniversary of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Speaking of masks, and our very own Brooke is directing. Some of you may have already attended on the 24th, but on the 30th, which is this coming Thursday, many UUs are going in grand support of Brooke. So if you'd like to join up and put your mask on, you'd be welcome.
Or the 1st. There's a group going the 1st too, which is the final day, is the 1st of November. Any more announcements? Well, I have one, and Julie, I'd like to speak to you more about yours, if you would like. So the people who weren't here last week when the board, I'm Alex, I'm a board member at large. I'm the one, if you would like to start a group to come to. And here's an example of one. I have VIUU Women's Group. We have some sign-ups over here. If it's green, that group already has a coordinator and it's going. If it's yellow like this, and it says, we need a coordinator, that's why the women's group is not meeting, because we don't have a coordinator. So if there's something you'd like to start, like something that's weekly or anything that goes on here, I'm also a building representative too. Please come to me. I'd love to help you to figure out how we can make this group happen. Okay. Is that it? Okay, so it is time to sing all of us out. It's Go Now in Peace, and please go to eat. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Thank you.